And now, right to your hosts of Down the Garden Path, Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing.
Hello and welcome to Down the Garden Path, where we discuss down-to-earth tips and advice while doing our best to help you seasonally manage your garden and landscape. I'm Joanne Shaw, owner of Down to Earth Landscape Design, and with me is my co-host Matthew Dressing. Hello there, Matthew.
Hello, Joanne, and good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Matthew Dressing, owner of Natural Affinity Garden Design. As landscape designers and gardeners, we believe it's important and possible to have great gardens, which are sustainable and low maintenance, and we want to help you make it happen.
That's right. And this month, we started a new month, everybody. I guess we started it. Yes, it's June. Anyway, this month on Down the Garden Path, we're looking at some of our favorite perennials, and we're kicking it off with a look at a versatile classic, sedum. From shrub substitute to colorful ground cover, it's hard not to have a great spot for a great sedum. So if you use sedums in your garden, what is your favorite variety? We would love to hear from you. Send us your questions to instudio101@gmail.com.
That's right. And you are right. We did technically start the month last week.
That's right.
But we were talking about our book.
We were talking about our book. Woohoo!
On Amazon. So for the rest of the month, we'll mention the book, which we would love for you guys to go and buy at amazon.ca or .com. But we are going to talk about perennials. Yes.
That's right. That's right.
And I think before we dive into the wonderful world of sedums, we were going to talk a little bit about a couple of perennial events that you and I got to attend to this weekend. That we've had some people write in and ask about. What happened this weekend with you?
On Sunday, I went to the Toronto Botanical Gardens tour. So they obviously haven't had it for a few years. It was in the Wychwood area of Toronto. So St. Clair, Bathurst, Spadina, that area. So very interesting area, very, very interesting just to see the different styles of homes and sizes of homes and yards. So there's a lot on the agenda. We did not see all of them.
Oh, pardon me.
So we took the shuttle bus and we, did as many as we could. I'm gonna sneeze. Oh, I'm sorry. Anyway, so yeah, it was a nice day. We were worried about the weather. My friend Nancy, who I've mentioned before on the show, and I did it, and with a few other people that we knew. So it was kind of every year you go and you see something that sticks in your head, because I'm feeling like I'm a little, I don't know, jaded just being a designer and going and kind of like, what am I looking for, that type of thing. But you always walk away with a few little tidbits.
Very nice. And what was one of the fun or your favorite tidbit that you walked away with?
This one was interesting in that I often clients, well, not often, but sometimes clients want a rose of Sharon, for instance, right? And specifically in the front yard. And I really try not to do that because the darn shrub looks like a dead shrub, a dead tree until, about now, like mid-June. And this homeowner, they had one in their front beside their front door, and then they must have had 6 rows of Sharons in their back. It was a corner lot. It was quite a nice sized yard. So the one at the front door, though, they had a spring blooming clematis growing on it. Beautiful. So it was it was interesting too, because they chose it well, because it was a double purple clematis. So at first look, you think, oh my goodness, the Rose of Sharon is blooming in June, right? And then you realize, oh no, that's not a, and then you know what I mean? Like, it really got you thinking. And I thought that was smart, have an early blooming clematis grow on something that's late to leaf out. And then you can cut down that clematis or move it to the side and let the Rose of Sharon shine a little bit later in the season. So I thought that was really interesting. And then somebody with me said you could do the opposite with lilac, right? So when a lilac's done blooming, And, especially some of the common, like woodier ones, right? After they've done blooming, you could have like a fall, or sweet autumn. Think about like a sweet autumn clematis kind of cascading throughout it or something. So I thought that was interesting way to have, I love my shrubs that do two things, but this was an interesting way to make, one space kind of do two things. So yeah, so that was right off the top of my head, I think that was my biggest takeaway, my little design trick there. What do you think? Yeah.
No, that's a great tip. Yeah, exactly. I always liked when people would get one of those old big corkscrew hazels, and eventually, they just get old and die. But then it's such an interesting, all the curling branches, and to do something like that, put an annual vine or a clematis or something around it to fill that interesting little space, all those twisty branches. So I think that's great.
Yeah, I think so too. So, and you went somewhere a little closer to home.
I did. Literally, I could almost see it from the window. But I went to, again, back for the first time after COVID, the Oshawa Peony Festival. So every year, the Oshawa Valley Botanic Gardens in the heart of downtown Oshawa has the Peony Festival. So they have lots of different peonies from different growers and homeowners that come and they plant around in this crescent moon shaped garden, big massive rows, and they label all these big beautiful peonies right in the middle of when they're all opening and blooming. And there are some that bloom a little earlier, and there was a few seed pods there, but the show, like every previous year, was absolutely spectacular. I probably took like 80 photos.
Oh, wow.
They're just gorgeous. But it's really fun too because you get a lot of local artisans as well. So you get to come take photos. You get to visit local, I think one of the local garden centers was there, but a lot of local garden artisans as well, making flags and pots and stands and fun stuff like that. So there was a lot to do besides just walk around this tiny little thing and look at peonies and walk away. Because they have also a big, beautiful waterfall and some nice hosta beds and display gardens there as well. So it was a lot of fun. Yeah. So Oshawa Peony Festival, always a big deal here in Oshawa. So you can always Google the Oshawa Peony Festival. And yeah, it was pretty fantastic. I'm going to post some photos on Instagram as well.
Oh, perfect. That'd be great. And we did have a listener pre-show starting. Did you see that? Ron wrote in and asking if he'd missed the Oshawa Peony Festival.
So Ron, if you're listening.
Yes, you did. Well, I emailed you back. But the thing about that is that just because the festival's over doesn't mean that peonies have stopped blooming, right? You can still go.
And that's exactly what I was going to say is they don't dig the peonies up. Not right away, at least. So if you are still in the area and you still want to go just see the peonies, they are still hanging out there and they will be for a while before they're taken away.
Okay, now that I had no idea that somebody like they bring them and then they take them away.
Not all of them, but there are a lot that stay there, and then there are some that go away.
Like, are they just container grown? Like, are they just kind of the pots put in the ground, or because peonies don't like being moved? So
no, they're usually most of them are there for a good part of the season, and then some of them are often taken away. Some of them are just unique varieties or cultivars that can't be replicated or are one of a kind. And so we often will see some of those leave. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, the whole bed doesn't just.
But they're not stolen. No. I'm like, yeah. Where are we taking them? So yes, that I did not know. I have really seen how my garden, my London plane trees have gotten so big so fast that so far it hasn't really impacted much in my garden, but it has impacted the peonies. So I have a 1 tree peony and 1 peony, and that I'm going to have to move now to like a sunnier part of the garden. Like so my one by my front door, that was always kind of questionable because I am east facing, but it got a little bit of the south sun a bit, by noon kind of thing. But yeah, 4 blooms, it's okay. Like it's alive, but it's not thriving. So I think it would be happier with some new blooms. And then I was thinking I lost my tree peony because like the 9 bark and the vibrant baby viburnum behind it and stuff. And it's just, I don't even know if it's going to bloom. I haven't seen a bud yet, but it's late, right? So to not have bloomed. So I think I've got to do some relocating, but so that was great. So it's always interesting. I've heard lots of talk. I think everybody's excited to get back in the garden. So there's been lots of announcements of different garden tours. So check, for anybody, check your local communities and see about garden tours if that's something you're interested in. It's always great to see. And I'm trying to think, garden for our Ontario listeners or even Canadian listeners, Garden Making Magazine. We used to have a magazine, but now it's just a newsletter. And they do what's happening each month, and they often list all the different garden clubs that are holding plant sales or garden tours. So not necessarily garden clubs, other organizations hold them too. Yeah.
Very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. So yeah, what events were in your area this weekend, or maybe ones that we should check out? Maybe we should have one on the show. That would be neat.
Well, speaking of that, so I also went with my designer friends to Whistling Gardens on Thursday. So I had a busy,
that's right, yes.
like a very busy work week because I had to work around these other events. So Whistling Gardens, so I spoke to Darren. He does want to be on the show. They have a 25th, I'll find it out here. They have a 25th anniversary coming up, or 20th anniversary coming up. And he does want to promote a few things. So we're excited. Whistling Gardens is just a very unique space. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere, but it's totally, I feel like it's the new worth the drive to Acton, because I think Acton now is not a big deal. But for those of you who grew up, that now this is worthwhile to go to Whistling Gardens. It's like, and they also had a peony festival, which was unbelievable. So so that was really good. So I highly recommend you trying that next year. But just go, like that's what we didn't want to go on the weekends, right? We kind of reserved the Thursday before or the Tuesday after, and we thought, okay, let's see where the season is, whether we went on the Thursday or the Tuesday. So we did the Tuesday.
Very
nice. So
there
you go. So so Whistling Gardens, lots of really cool conifers, see some really interesting trees and in mature state, see the peonies. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Very nice. And if you want to learn more about Whistling Gardens and what Darren and them all do there is a podcast. We had them on in March of 2019. So you can Google Down the Garden Path podcast, Whistling Gardens, and you should find our episode there.
Excellent. So
sedums. Sedums. What are sedums? We probably have all seen sedums. We actually have a listener, Amy, who was very close to the top, right?
Amy. Thank you, Amy. Shout out to Amy
for sending
in a picture.
Yeah, so she's got a beautiful picture. She looks like she's got 3 of her sedums there in her beautifully mulched garden. Some nice grasses growing there. Amy's from Chicago. They look beautiful. They look like Purple Emperor. I don't know, Amy, if you know the cultivar name or who it is, but yeah, they look stunning and nice and ready to bloom.
Yeah, isn't this the variety you put on the graphic?
It does, yeah. I have the Purple Emperor variety. That's exactly what I thought.
Yeah, Amy, you've sent us a perfect graphic picture, so thank you. That's great. No, that is very good, very exciting. We love pictures. And this is Clyde. He is saying, okay. Yes, this is what we were talking about. Clyde is asking about the garden shows that you know of here in the GTA coming up. I know a lot were canceled over the past 2 years. Now he can't keep track as to what is happening. So like I said, I would check out the Garden Making website and get their newsletter, and it'll be emailed to you, and it gives a lot of events. I've had a couple sent to me because also through from the garden club. I'm president of the Pickering Garden Club. So I've had a few. I think Sterling is having one. So yeah, we can put some dates of the ones I know about in our show notes. And but definitely there's lots happening. So yeah, in the community.
So much fun out there to be had.
Right.
And then we have one more message off the top, and it was Steve has written in, "Hi Matt and Joanne, I have an idea for a show, and I know that you've asked, and yes, we always are. So if you have an idea for the show, let us know. We love new ideas and knowing what you guys have on top of your gardening minds." So Steve says, "How about ways and information about collecting rainwater? I sent a drawing as an attachment. That would be really cool. Thank you." And yes, thank you, Steve, for the wonderful idea. Most certainly. And I think there's going to be some different regulations and stuff. We'll have to
Mhm.
research for different parts of the country. But I think I just saw Joanne write that down, Steve. So
I
thank you
did. I wrote it
for
down, and I
reading
think we
that
had
out.
another listener write in about that as well in the past. So I think, yeah.
Perfect. And
Mhm.
I forget their name too, but we also just had someone wrote you about a show all about poisonous plants.
That's right. That's right.
So
And we're excited because I think that's a great idea, right?
yes, we might do that sooner than later.
That's right. So stay tuned.
So stay tuned.
That's right. So
But the
yeah.
plant all about tonight's show, as we kind of veer a little bit of everywhere, and not that we don't appreciate everybody's questions and suggestions, etc. We're going to jump back into sedums, 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 sedums. So these are, you've probably seen them, beautiful succulent plants. Most of them are late summer to fall flowering. You can get, as Joanne mentioned in the beginning, you can get things like Purple Emperor or Autumn Joy. Some of them can get fairly large and almost become like a small shrub substitute. Very architectural, very rounded, densely branched, and then they're going to flower in the fall. Oh, I think you're gonna say something. One of the things we love about our sedums, though, is that they are very drought tolerant once they are established. So they have a wide range. They can take a little bit of moisture as well. But they don't like the standing water. So they're going to love a full sun to a partial sun. They're going to grow and spread depending on the type you have. You can get anywhere from about 12 inches to about 24 inches tall and wide. So about 2 by 2, sometimes 3 by 3 if you have an older plant, or depending on the cultivar, but very drought tolerant. They like dry. They will tolerate the moisture, but it has to be very well drained moisture. It does
Yeah.
not want to stand in any water whatsoever. So if you've got a dry, uh, sun blasted spot, sedum is going to be a great little choice for you. Do you have any sedums in your garden?
I do. I have a lot of, I really like the ground cover more. I mean, I think when you say sedum, I think most people think of that big autumn joy one, right? Which is
Yes.
kind of big, and it's kind of like a hosta, like it's the other extreme in the hosta in the sense that it always gets too big and they have to divide it and they give it to all their friends. And so now everybody's got lots of sedum. I really like the smaller ones. So I've almost made a carpet. And one thing that they are good for is they are salt tolerant. So
Yes.
they are so they're along my garden. That's along my driveway. They are along the curb that is along the street because I don't have a sidewalk and my garden goes right to the curb. So they have proven to be really good, really resilient at everything that gets piled onto them. The garbage cans and recycling cans, again, I get tossed in that area too. Like, they're pretty resilient. I wouldn't say they're steppable. So that is one thing I think people wish that you could, they were often asked, like, what could you put between stepping stones or instead of grass and have it be a steppable? And I think that would really damage them. Like, I don't think that they would really last. I think there's some that are tighter, right? You could find some that are, but I think then those ones are so slow growing that you would never really get it to fill in.
Yeah, they would be neat against a rockery or something like that, but not to step on. And I agree. I've seen them in spaces where you get something like a variegated one or like the classic dragon's blood, but they have very thin, fleshy stems, the ground cover ones. And I found that stepping on them, they're often very easily crushed. And if they don't break off, they've bruised, and you just lose that nice, fine kind of rounded foliage. It just becomes unsightly, and you want to prune it. So yeah, there are definitely better selections for the steppables.
For sure. And I don't really even care about the flower, to be honest. Like, I love the texture. I love that they're more open. Like, I've got dragon's blood mixed with another one, mixed with and like they all have a slightly different texture. And then you get into Angelina, which is a really tight, fine texture, but it's bright yellow. It's not a flower, people. It's just a texture of a foliage. And those, some of them also, like, you literally can take a piece off of, like, break a piece off and toss it on ground and it just grows, right? So that's, good or bad depending on how careful you are. But I just love that. I love that it has knit itself together. I even have some creeping thymes. I should almost even post a picture later. So I've got carpet juniper, a creeping woolly thyme, and a sedum, and they've kind of like woven together, and it's quite interesting. Yeah,
that would be beautiful.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. So yeah, I can speak very highly on some of that. I wish I knew all the varieties, but I think when you go to the ground cover section, we know dragon's blood because it's the one that gets, kind of red, but there's a lot of green ones and lime green ones. I dug one up. I had to move some around, and I have a variegated green and white one. And then one that was more white with green too.
Right. It was reminding me of like the variegated Russian one. It kind of has that classic longer lanceolate or almost oval-like leaf, gets some pink flowers on it. A nice low growing, about 6 inches to about a foot wide, same conditions. The other ones that I like as well are things like the Daphne. It's a little bit of a different one. So it's got more of like rounded leaves along the stem. So it has a different, like an upright and arching. It's a little bit bigger of a spreader.
Okay.
And it has a nice silvery blue with a little bit of pink around the edges. But so there's a lot of different variety. Like you said, Angelina is a bright yellow one. It was, I never want to remember, there was an annual version. It was the Proven Winners Perennial of the Year. I think 2 years ago, that was similar to it. But it's long, thin, bright chartreuse yellow stems. And then it's got like nice little, almost like evergreen needles spiking out onto it in nice waves and things.
It's funny. So I'm thinking we should have, no, I'm just thinking that we're talking about it and we didn't really come up with names of specific sedums. And I went to the my grower's book, and there is a page, like there's two columns per page. So there is a page and a half, almost 3 pages. I think a page front and back of sedums. So and some of the names are just hilarious. So yeah, where we talked about the dragon's blood, then there's red carpet. Yeah, so the dragon's blood, I always get those two mixed up, because I think that, so the dragon's blood is green but has red flowers, and the red carpet stone crop is red leaves and gets red flowers. And right, do you get them mixed up too?
All the time. Yeah. I always do that for dragon's blood. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. And they all say stone crop as well. So I think sedum, when I also hear stone crop, I think of sedum, like the Autumn Joy sedum, which is the big kind of more rounded one. That's what I think of. But so that's a rounded one. Autumn Fire is rounded. But there's some really cool, fun names. Back in Black. Upright growth habit near black leaves, which boogie woogie stone crop, which I thought was funny. So variegated green leaves with creamy margins. Yellow flowers appear by midsummer. And they do kind of surprise you with the flowers, right? They're not all the same. They really are unique.
Yeah, they're all a little different. Umbels and little clusters. And some of them are very layered and architectural. And then some just like cover the whole plant completely, like an early spring phlox.
Yeah. Lita Kent's stone crop was eye-catching red stems with hot pink star-shaped flowers, ground cover mounded form. And the other good thing to know is most of these, in fact, if not all of these that I'm looking at, are zone 3.
I was going to say, we haven't said anything about the zones. Yeah, they are arranged from zone 2 to 3, and then forward into the 9s and 10s, depending on where you are. So great long or wide range for sure. Yeah, I love Lady Kent's as well. Again, it kind of gives me that that nice kind of silvery blue kind of look, a little bit to that foliage too, for sure. And the fun names, the Boogie Woogie Rock and Grow stone crops.
Yes. And one that you didn't know this, but when you worked at the garden center, you actually convinced me to buy Dazzleberry. And I have to say, the one thing I love about Dazzleberry, now I can't speak to these others. So it's bigger than a ground cover. Here I am. I moved the
Yes.
camera up. So it's bigger than a ground cover. It is a mound, but not like Autumn Joy. It is
No.
just like a softer mound. But the foliage, so again, I'm not like the flower is the flower, but the foliage, that purple, silver purple foliage in the garden is so lovely. It's a lovely little surprise.
Isn't it amazing? Yeah. Just that neat, nice little spreading mound and that beautiful, rich foliage color just is eye stopping. And I think what was the series? I think it's the Dazzleberry series. So I think there's a whole series now. I'm totally forgetting them off the top of my head.
Well, you think while I read this. So gray blue foliage with a pink tone, bright raspberry pink flowers appear early, and this is cool, everybody, early August and last into September. And that can be a hard time in the garden, end of August, September. We get a lot of ones that bloom in September and a lot of ones that finish in August. So this is kind of a neat bridge one. And like I said, it doesn't, the problem for me with Stonecrop is that, not Stonecrop, Autumn Joy, is that it gets big and it does that splitting in the center, that kind of thing, where these are, I love them that they're tighter. Yeah. And the ground cover ones are easy. Like I have one that kind of took off on me, and it's underneath my, I have a little bonsai juniper, and it's kind of grown underneath the bonsai juniper, which doesn't allow you to see the shape of the bonsai. So my neighbor was actually doing some work on his boulevard and getting rid of the weeds and turning it into a garden. And I said, and he had ground covers, and he bought some of Sedums himself and some creeping thyme and stuff. And I said, here, come get a shovel full or two of Angelina, because I said, I need this to go away because I can't, it'll come back. But they're very easy to share, but not that someone will regret it. It's not like sharing gout weed or something, right?
Yes, I was going to say, because you've said that a lot of times on the show, which is great. If someone's usually giving it away because they've got lots of it, it's maybe not something you want in your garden.
Absolutely.
But this is one of those ones that you can get those groups that will spread, but it's not invasive. It's not like a lily of the valley or a goutweed or a whatever. Right? Yeah. So, yeah, excellent point.
Yeah.
We're reaching the bottom of the hour, and I see there is a few questions popping in. I think there's another picture, but I'm just going to pause and say thank you, everyone, for joining us here live on Reality Radio 101. I'm Matthew Dressing here with my co-host, Joanne Shaw, and you're listening to Down the Garden Path. Joanne and I enjoy hosting Down the Garden Path each week, bringing you interesting and relevant topics to help you achieve a great garden. We learn right along with you from our research and from the guests that join us here on the show. Don't forget, you can spend more time with us down the garden path. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Our handle there is at Down the Garden Path podcast. And you can learn a lot more with some low maintenance tips and tricks with our new book, Down the Garden Path, a step-by-step guide to your Ontario garden. And it does go beyond Ontario, but we're here. The zones and the timing are just a little off. So don't be afraid to pick it up. If you're listening to the podcast as well, maybe you're in the car, you're at home, it's not live Monday night. Thank you as well for joining us here and downloading the podcast. Don't forget, you can find the podcast of all the previous episodes on your favorite podcast provider. Just Google Down the Garden Path podcast. Don't forget, while you're there, please hit that subscribe button to be notified of new content. And please don't forget to like, share, and leave us a comment. We love hearing from our listeners. We love your pictures. We love your ideas. We love knowing what's going on in your gardening world. So if you have something to say, we'd love to hear from you. You can always write us here. Gary, our wonderful producer, will get us the mail at instudio101@gmail.com. But you can also find us via our websites. You can find Joanne at www.downtoearth.ca, and you can find myself at www.naturalaffinity.ca. So let's jump into those. Who do we have? I've got Kyle. Yes, Kyle sent a picture. Matt or Joanne, do you know what this is? Someone said it was a sedum, but I am not sure. I live in Port Hope, Ontario. Oh, so you're very close. Kyle, just up the road from me. Yes, it is a sedum. It is a sedum. Which cultivar? I am not too sure. It reminds me of Purple Emperor, or I want to say Matrona, but I think that was a denser form of Autumn Joy. So I might be wrong, but I always think that's one of the purple ones as well. And I might be wrong, but you are correct. It is a sedum for sure. Joanne is muted because I think she's saying something. So she's muted and she doesn't. Anyways, there she goes.
I'm back.
Welcome back. You were saying something. Did you find out what it was?
That's one way for me not to talk over you, right, Gary? Is if I keep muted.
There you go.
So I think by your picture and the description I'm reading for Purple Emperor, I think Matt is Matt's always right, you guys. So I think it's Purple Emperor, Matt. So he knows his plants. So there you go. So sorry about that.
Just
give that nice little description. Just muted. So thank you, Kyle. We love it, everybody, when you send us pictures. Bye.
Yes, we love the pictures for sure.
Oh, this is a good one from Craig. Do you want me to read this one?
Yeah. What does Craig?
Sure. So, hi, Garden Path. Oh, we're called Garden Path now. Thank you. What is the best soil type to plant sedum? P.S. Good luck with the book. Thank you, Craig. So yeah, Matt, we don't want it to be too wet, like you said, but they don't necessarily need like overly nutritious soil. Like they're,
Right. Nutritious will help. They don't need rich. They can be planted in average to poor soil. If you've got some average soil, you've added some compost, or just some top dressing to it. Maybe you've got a nice well-drained soil, average soil, that is good for it. But the drainage is the key. She doesn't want to sit there. Average to poor soil is perfectly fine. She's fairly adaptable as far as that pH range goes, just as long as, again, she's not standing in water. So,
yeah.
And you've got a full sun to partial sun location for sure. So hope that helps, Craig.
Yeah.
We have got Dawn, who's written in to Joanne and Matthew. I'm wishing you the best in your new book. Such an amazing task to achieve. Love your show and your advice. Always, Dawn. Thank you so much, Dawn. Thank you very much. We've also, Jim has also sent out over a picture.
Oh,
what is it? Oh, that's funny. Jim has sent over a picture. He says, hello, Garden Path. I was weeding my garden over the weekend and I had a brilliant idea. I know folks that are vegan pass it on. He sent a picture and it's a little wedge, a pie-shaped wedge of grass and soil, and it says vegan cheesecake.
Oh, yes.
Yes, very funny. Thank you very much, Jim. So sedums. So I was trying to find that sedum group, and I believe it's one of the groups are the Sunsparkler series as well. And you're muted again.
Nope, I'm back.
Oh, there you go. Just in time.
I have this tickle. So that's why I keep muting, because I have this tickle in my throat. So I'm trying not to cough in everybody's ear. So apologies, but yeah. So tell us about that variety.
Yeah, the Sunsparkler series, you've got, again, like the Dazzleberries, you've got a group of sedums who are focusing on the foliage color. So for example, Blue Pearl is a beautiful one, again, late summer to early fall, zones 4 to 9. Nice, beautiful, rich, almost like blue-black foliage. And then they're going to get, again, those nice flowers over in the fall and the summer that are a nice, rich, deep pink. So most of the flowers, I think we've kind of mentioned it, but haven't really stated it. For the most part, we're going to see light pinks, medium pinks, dark pinks, and then some variations again, usually some nice rich reds, medium to dark, rich reds across the series. I haven't seen any white ones. More so, no white flower ones. Have you seen any white flowering? I've seen white foliage, but
I don't like, how I said I've got the green with white edges, and then I moved the one, and it was kind of growing differently. It was, even though it was smaller like my ground cover ones, it was more mounded, like the Dazzleberry, but just smaller, and it was more white than green. And I wonder if that would have a different flower. So I'll have to keep my eye open for it.
We'll have to get an update for later.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. So
So Blue Pearl is in the Sunsparkler series, and so is Dazzleberry. But again, I just call Dazzleberry because it's absolutely dazzling. So definitely check that one out. Were you, sorry, I think I was jumping in there. Were you going to jump in with another question?
Well, I don't know, we can talk about Sedum mats. I don't know if you wanted to talk about that. So that is a product, I know. So it's a product that I've been dying to use. And so is my girlfriend, Nancy, that I mentioned. And she used it for one of the Canada Blooms booths, and then used it in the leftover ones from Canada Blooms went to her garden. And then, so she managed to get a job earlier this season of somebody wanted their boulevard completely ripped out. They wanted it all, ground cover, that type of thing. So she pitched them Sedum mats, and they went for it. So, and then I said, so the only thing about Sedum mats is to order them directly. Like the garden centers don't stock them. So what they are, I believe, rectangles, 1 foot by 2 feet of, and when she got them at the news several years ago at Canada Blooms, they were actually woven on a fabric. But these new ones, it's just the roots. There's no fabric. So she has, I think the minimum order is 250 square feet, which is a lot of Sedum mats. So she convinced them to let her have her 75 square feet. And I said, okay, I have a couple of edges, a couple of spots where I thought I could really use them, but also I wanted to test them out for jobs and clients myself. So I said, I think I calculated 12. I said, I'll take 12. So she ordered. This is kind of a funny story. So I'll just say it quickly. So she ordered, she had them all delivered to her site, anyway. And so sure enough, and they do not need to be butted up against each other so that they can grow into each other. Well, lo and behold, she called me to say, I think I need some of your 12 because I didn't order enough. So I ended up with 3, let me just say. So it was hilarious because she transferred me, I transferred her the money right away. I was so excited to get 12 Sedum mats to play with. And now I have 3. Now in hindsight, I did not have room for 12. I was, being over, so I was the opposite of her. So,
3.
So they are, and it's shocking. So it's a mix. Angelina's not in the mix, which is interesting. It's a nice tight mix. And you just need to, dig out, they're probably about an inch thick. So we dug down about an inch and placed them on the ground. And so I could post a picture. So watch for it on social media. I will post, or in our Facebook group also. I will post a picture of mine that I just did. And then I took a picture of Nancy's garden that has grown in, and her whole front yard is all garden, no grass. And it's really, really done well. So I think that's something, you do have to involve a contractor probably, unless you have a really big job. You can't purchase directly. It's kind of a trade product, often commonly used on green roofs as well. So they definitely have, and you can do a green roof on your shed even. So something to think about. So everybody can, hope you check out my pictures later. And so that's another way and another benefit of using Sedum.
Yeah, I remember the garden center that I worked at, we did have, we would bring them in occasionally. And then you'll see them at our garden center. We had them for about $24.99, and it was about 2 square feet. So we'd bring in so many. And then we did for a year or two, we had a little, like a little dog house that we decorated the roof with.
Yes. Now I remember
I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
We had all the little sedums and stuff like that. And then, like you said, often seen in all the green roof projects. As well, for sure. And I was I thought I had one, an old contact of mine. She does that in Toronto. I was thinking we could have her on the show, but I'll have to quickly Google her afterwards.
Yeah. And I know I have another friend of mine who tried them between her stepping stones. And so most of her backyard is kind of big concrete stepping stones and big concrete squares of patio. And she initially had put Sedum mats down in between the gaps, instead of grass. But it's funny, she found that they actually grew too well. So they were like a tripping hazard because now they had grown so much. So she had done, so it's another use for them if they're in a space where you have the space, right? Is between stepping stones. or maybe an area where people don't walk that often, that type of thing. So she had to remove it all, and then she's done micro clover instead, Matt. So that'll be interesting. That's Melanie Recola. She's been on our show in the past few years ago doing pool design. We talked to her about that. So
I was just gonna say we were talking about her with pools, weren't we?
Yeah, cool. For sure. So so there's lots. I mean, I think they're very durable, and I know Bonnie has just written in saying, "Are these plants or a bush? They are beautiful, expensive, hard to grow. Can we get them and plant them now here in the GTA?" And yes to all of that, right?
Yeah, yes to all of that. Definitely take a look.
Oh no, they're not expensive. So.
Sorry. Yes, expensive. They're not expensive at all. That was on my list to cover as well, because we often get that as well, right? How expensive are these plants? And depending on the size that you're going to see, really, you might see a 2-gallon Autumn Joy or Purple Emperor or a garden, or like one of the mats, if you can find them, for about 20 to 25 bucks.
Mm-hmm.
But they're fairly inexpensive. You'll often see them again labeled individually in like a 4-inch or a 4.5 or a quart pot, ranging anywhere from $3.99 to about $7.99, depending on the cultivar and the size of the pot. But definitely get out there now and start looking, even though they are fall blooming. Again, for the rest of the season, we have wonderful blues and purples and rich silvers and variegated greens and whites, and some reds for all season or for all summer interest. So you will get to see a lot of them out right now versus when they flower. For example, hydrangeas. When it's summertime and it's hydrangea time, there's all the hydrangeas in the world. But sedums tend to be a little bit more heavy in availability earlier than their bloom time.
That's right. Especially those 4-inch pots. So if you go to a garden center now, and they're got them on sale, because they went, and watering those 4-inch pots is not their favorite thing to do, trying to keep those plants alive. So you can often go and get 6 or 7 or 8 of those and make yourself a nice good patch. So it's good for like a slightly high traffic area. Maybe to have people avoid that area if you've got something that's planting there, or under other plants. That's how I have them. They're very understory along the boulevard or the edge of like I said, if your garden edges to the driveway or edges to the sidewalk, it's another good one. Around rocks, that type of thing. Instead of river rock, which can be high maintenance, you could do like a little kaleidoscope of different sedums and have them grow together. And they're tough. They can take a little bit of abuse, no, not daily walking, but they definitely are tough. So yeah. And I'm usually not even crazy about the flowers, beyond it, because sometimes the flowers get a little tall and then they just kind of stand there, right? So
yes, I agree. And then like you said, you're tough, they're salt tolerant as well. So great for that dry, average kind of rough spot. So great for a ground cover. Great. You can make your own little mix and match matting. You can make them as a nice mass ground cover. They're also rabbit resistant as well.
Ooh, there's a big one. What about deer, do you think?
Deer as well. They don't like all of them. When push comes to shove, I think either of them are going to take a nibble or two, or walk over them. But they, for the most part, are deer and rabbit resistant as well.
There you go.
And then we do get all those other benefits, attracting, bees as they gather the last resources for sleep, for winter, and butterflies, hummingbirds, things like that. Great for texture as well. We also had, I think, Stephen has written in as well, just hi to Joanne and Matt. Are these perennials correct? Or these are perennials correct? And yes, just to reemphasize that point, yes, they are all perennials. Hardy to zone 2 to 3 is where they'll go high, and then they'll go higher, low zones, 2 to 3 cold hardiness, and then their heat tolerance is about 9 or a 10. You can, however, find some annual varieties of sedum that won't survive our winters. They're going to be hardy 11, 12, and usually in the southern United States kind of area. But for the most part, they're going to be perennial.
Okay. That's great. Yeah. And they're very versatile. So, I mean, they looked good As a grouping, they look good as this is one thing that Nancy. So speaking of autumn joy, so where we parked. So one thing about these garden tours, they're in these communities that you don't normally walk around, right? The old areas of Toronto.
Yeah.
And so only certain homes are on the tour. But when you have to walk from point A to point B, right, you're passing all these other homes. So actually, it was a house near where we parked the car, and they had in this area a lot of sloped front yards, a lot of tiered, and a lot of people saw how people dealt with or didn't deal with their slopes, right?
Yes.
So this one, they had a tree kind of midway down on their slope, and the border, I mean, they did have stone stacked up, kind of retaining the soil, but they kind of had like a U-shaped border underneath the tree, like half circle of small sedums, small autumn joys. And it made like a nice tidy border in a half circle around the base of that tree. You would do like a mulch circle, like what was the half, like the outline of the root ball. And we both were like, oh, well, that's good purpose use. That's a good use for sedum, because it would be very dry, right? Like everything draining in that garden, right? And that type of thing. So so it did kind of, and I think it helped with that retaining as well, even though there was stone underneath it. I wouldn't say it was professionally installed stone. So I feel like the sedum actually did a little bit of help with a little bit of retaining. So not to replace your retaining walls, but there is definitely, it's really a plant that I feel like is underused a little bit. And then to think outside the autumn joy of not just going with what your neighbor has and she's given you, or your mom has and she's given you, and you've divided it 3 or 4 times, much like the green and white hosta, right? That everybody has a gazillion of because somebody divided it and had so much of it. So really look for the dazzleberry, look for the ground cover ones, look for something really interesting texture and color. And what you mentioned about the bees too, the fact that they bloom later in the season is also very valuable.
Yeah, that nice little pollen nectar source before everyone heads to sleep. We're almost at the end of the show. We're hitting in that last 10 minutes. Do we have some more questions? What do we have?
We have Joe. Do you want me to read Joe's?
Yeah, what does Joe say?
Joe says, good topic tonight. His question for us is, how does he care for, or do I need to prune my potted sedum plants? Interesting, Joe. So you're going to try to keep it in a pot.
Yeah, and I mean, Joe, depending on where you are, if you're in a zone like we were in the zone 5B, 6A, if you have one that's zone, 2 or 3, a little cooler, she'll take a little bit more of that freeze thaw, that winter cold that we've got. So yeah, very cool. How do you care for it? Just make sure, again, you've got that nice drainage. If it's getting too big, or you find it's getting kind of straggly looking and you want to increase its vigor and just kind of revitalize it, you want to divide them in early spring as those shoots come out. Just dig her up, take a nice little piece off of her. You can use it to amend the soil, add some, again, just well drained. You could add a little bit of compost, but average, to poor soil is good. And then just making sure you've got that nice, bright, sunny to part sun location. As long as she's hardy and she's got that sun, you're probably pretty good. They're great for containers. I've often...
I was just thinking about that. Angelina, right?
Angelina is a classic, Or any of the little variegated ones. I've always loved just grabbing 1 or 2 of those 4-inch ones and just putting it in a nice sunny container and just letting it spill over the side. So
yeah. Do you think you could overwinter them in the container? Do you think maybe in the garage?
I was going to say, I think if you had a protected enough space and then just watching the container again, making sure that it doesn't dry out. Being a perennial does want that cold period, and just let her go to sleep and then pop her back out again. Last year I mentioned, I think Julia was on the show last year, and I said I was trying my perennial alpine strawberries out in my window boxes, and had great success. I just kind of pushed it against the door and just let kind of stuff blow on them and put some perennials, and they all popped back up. So and they were hardy to zone 5, so that was right on our zone, and they came up. I lost 1 or 2. I had like a dozen plants, but yeah. So yeah, Joe, if they're cold enough, you should be able to do that. Or like you said, if you don't have a protected spot or somewhere to put it over the winter. If you have an unheated garage, just
Mhm.
again, bring it into just inside the door, because at the back of the garage is going to freeze really hard. So, and you get that little bit of air movement, and it's a lot more forgiving at the front of the garage door. Just don't hit it
Okay.
with your car as you go. But
Matt, nobody, I know you live in a condo, but nobody with a house parks in the garage.
Oh, okay.
So we don't have to
All
worry
right.
about that.
My friend in Lindsay parks 2 cars in their garage.
Does she really? Wow.
They do, 2 SUVs, but
2 SUVs. I want to meet them. Oh my gosh. But yeah, so no, that's kind of funny. But yeah, because I think it would be, they would, because of the variety of them, you could really make some really interesting arrangements in containers. That's something that honestly didn't occur to me till right now. You know,
yeah.
I mean, aside from the Angelina and it being like, instead of sweet potato vine being that cascading one. So yeah, so definitely some neat uses.
Yeah. So, and I mean, one of the ones in the Sunsparkler series, the blue elf. Again, beautiful blue and silver foliage, 4 to 6 inches only tall, great for a little spiller, and growing anywhere from 14 to 18 inches wide. Not going to be that full in that first year, obviously. But yeah, just lots of great dwarf varieties, medium-sized varieties, like Sunsparkle Dazzleberry, and then, you know, Purple Emperor and your Autumn Joys, and Matrona's your classic upright rounded one. So yeah, such great varieties too, right?
Yeah, and even
Great
the yellow,
mix.
like I've got Lemon Jade, Lime Zinger, and
Yeah,
Yellow
Lime
Brick
Zinger's
Road.
awesome.
So those are some really interesting ones, and they do have the little. It's funny, the little symbols in this, you know, have the little cactus, a little butterfly, and a little bee.
Yeah.
How often do you see that in our play? And I'm going to go through the rest of this book. I don't know that we're going to see those three together, but that is salvia. We've got hummingbird, butterfly, bee. Oh no, and no deer. That's it. So
No deer.
not a cactus. And you mentioned it before the show too, that sometimes people might think of, like I think of the indoor plant, like the because they became very popular.
The Echeverias.
Thank you. Over my head. And then outside, like the hens and chicks.
Yeah.
You know, so they, you know, kind of like they're kind of in the same family, but not really, I don't think, right? Botanically, they're not really. But they do have that same kind of texture, and like think of an aloe vera plant, right? But the sedums aren't as juicy, you know, as like an aloe vera plant, but
right.
Definitely a succulent and not needing a lot of water, and can take some tough love. So very good for people who have a lot of sun, don't want to do a lot of watering, and don't want to do a lot of much, right? Like they can really take some tough love.
Yeah, they can take that heat in spades, that average to poor soil, very drought tolerant. You know, the hens are the big ones, and little chicks are the little sports that little rhizomes or the stolons get spread out. So they're easy to locate. And again, like the sedums, you've got beautiful greens and golds and reds. Spiderweb is one of my favorite. It has a little pubescence that has the little spikes all open. It pulls apart this little cottony web around it and gives it a very soft texture. So lots of cool variety there as well. As we're getting to the last 5 minutes, Mike has written in as well. Hi, Joanne and Matthew. Here are my sedum. At least I think they are. We bought the property last year, and this is what I was told they are. He lives in Boulder, Colorado. And Mike, forgive me, I thought I could just click on the picture and open them up. But
I can't. Yeah, I couldn't. Can you? Because I couldn't either.
I can, but when I enlarge it, it's very blurry.
Yes.
So it does look like there's a little bit there on the bottom around the rock by the pink, Mike. And then it looks like you've got some daylilies in the grass.
Yep. And on the left could be too.
I was going to say just above the stone right there.
Yeah.
That looks like it could be an autumn joy or a whoever. Yeah. So it looks like you might have a few different sedums there for sure. Awesome. Thank you for your picture, Mike.
Yeah. Thank you. So we're excited to do perennial month for you this, even though it's 3 weeks. It's a perennial 3 weeks, right? And Matt and I were talking about the show, and we want to do a shout out because we think there's a whole bunch. You know, we've done a lot of shows on different perennials, and they've all been kind of very popular or new or innovative. You know, like the different salvias, much like we did shrubs, right? You know, but I think there's some that are really interesting perennials, and they are hard workers in your garden, and yet no one really talks much about them. So we don't know what the title of the show is going to be yet, but I want to hear from, like, if you have something tonight, you can write us in the last 4 minutes of the show, or 3 minutes, Gary, sorry, or send us an email at instudio101@gmail.com, or down the garden podcast.
Garden Path Podcast, down the
Thank
Garden
you.
Path Podcast at hotmail.com.
At hotmail.com. And tell us what one in perennial in your garden that just seems to perform without any, pomps or you know what I mean? Like anything, and any hard work or anything like that. And that just shows up, and it serves maybe a period of time, like it looks good a period of time in the summer when other things don't, or it provides good structure or interest, or anything, or even, of course, a pretty flower. We always love that, right? Yes. So, yes. So I would love to hear what you have. Matt and I both have our ideas and our list. So we will come up with that's what I'm looking forward to talking about that next week, because we'll probably both learn some stuff, right?
That's right. We'll dive into those little categories of super performers that maybe we don't all have our eyes on, that are just tucked away in those benches of your local garden center, for sure.
That's right. So yeah.
Another week, another episode. So we hope you all enjoyed our little dive into the world of sedums. Again, these guys are beautiful performers, wondrous performers. Easy to divide, tough conditions, deer, rabbit, drought tolerant, resistance. There's really going to be a sedum out there for everybody, especially as things become warmer and hotter and sunnier, as we move through what we have as climate change and local regions change, etc. So there's definitely a great, beautiful sedum out there, whether it's you're buying it for the foliage, that tough spot in your area, or just a nice fall blooming shrub substitute. Maybe you've got that little gap in your fall flower color, and you need a little pop of color and some architecture or a backdrop. You've got some great, taller, rounder sedums to pick from.
That's right. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to another episode here on Reality Radio 101 of Down the Garden Path podcast. Don't forget, you can find us on our websites, www.downtoearth.ca and naturalaffinity.ca. And don't forget, I'd be remiss if I forgot to say, don't forget to check out our new book, Down the Garden Path, a step-by-step guide to your Ontario garden, now available on Amazon. It goes through all of the wonderful tips, tricks, and advice that we've been put on the show or on the radio over the last many years. Have a great evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in again, and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Down the Garden Path with your hosts Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing, right here on Reality Radio 101.